The mystery of the 144,000. Okay, this is so exciting to share with you. I have been studying this for years. I have a whole playlist on the 144,000. And now what we're going to do is we're finally going to reveal the order of the list of the tribes. We're going to understand it by basically two simple concepts. That is the concept of the firstborn and the concept of Gentiles. Okay, Jewish Gentile. Now this is a big stumbling block for many, many people, even many of you watching this. You will say, okay, the 144,000 are Jews. Well, the tribe of Judah is Jews. Yes, that's what Jews means, is Yehuda. Okay? But why is the order of the 12 tribes listed in the particular names that we see in Revelation chapter 7? Why is this? How can we make sense of this? What does this mean? Guys, if you do a Google search or you look it up or you research it, you'll see the 12 tribes of the children of Israel listed throughout the Bible, listing each tribe. The total number of tribes is actually 14, including Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So, of the 14, 12 are picked and ordered for various reasons. Okay? The common listing is by firstborn. So you can just look up and go to Genesis and see the sons. And those sons come from how many mothers? How many mothers does Jacob have? Okay. You say 2, right? Yeah, it's 2. It's Rachel and Leah. Wrong. It is not 2. It is 4. It's 4, and there's a reason for that. Okay? And there's a significance to the reason why the order of the tribes are so, because you could go by firstborn, but Revelation chapter 7 does not go by all 12 tribes in the order of firstborn, like you see in Genesis. So why is the order listed so? It's very difficult. It's not an easy concept to grasp. But what happens is we have a shifting take place within the order, and it has a message to it. There's a message. There's a reason. There's a profound reason why the specific tribes are listed in the order from 1 through 12 that we see in Revelation 7. And what is it? Gentiles. So, let's just answer this right from the beginning. Do you have to be Jewish to be one of the 144,000? No. Hopefully that's what you can understand from this video. Flesh and blood is not how we inherit, okay? But there's an order. There's always an order to the tribes, okay? As we've been showing you over and over, there's an order of 4, okay? And you have the 4 cherubim, lion, ox, man, eagle, east, west, south, north. And there are 4 mothers, okay? There are 4 mothers to the 12 tribes, okay? So it's the same pattern, the same order we see around the throne of the 4 cherubim, of the 4 wheels. Well, it's also 4 mothers to the 12 tribes. Okay? Now, that we can just read Genesis and we can understand that. Okay? But the way we understand this and give the interpretation that we give, always on this channel, even the listing in the order is not only what you can just see in the order of the firstborn or the order of the wives. We can look at it, but it's also by letting the scriptures themselves teach us, letting the scriptures themselves give us information somewhere else in the Bible to interpret, to give us the key, to unlock the door. Okay? Now, one of those keys we know is the key to the house of David. Okay? So, in Revelation 5:5, Weep not, John. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has prevailed. He has prevailed. The Lion of the tribe of Judah has prevailed and is worthy to open the seal. Then we see in Revelation 22, verse 16, Christ said, I am the root and the offspring, or the kin of David. Okay? So, the book of Revelation gives us the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, which are also in New Jerusalem. And it gives us this root and offspring to look into David. Okay, we look into David, and we see one of the tribes listed there. So it tells us, the line of the tribe of Judah. So the Messiah comes through the line of the tribe of Judah. So Judah becomes the firstborn. All right? And he replaces Reuben. Now there's a reason for that. We're going to get into the reason later in the video. So the first thing that we see in the listing of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, of the 144,000, is Judah is first. Judah becomes the firstborn. He becomes first. Okay? So the root and the offspring of David, that the Messiah comes through the root and offspring of David. Okay? And when he does, Judah is the firstborn. So Christ is our firstborn of many brethren. Okay? All right, so that's what we see in Revelation. All right? But what it's telling us is the root and offspring of David is telling us to look into the offspring of David. If we look into the offspring of David, it'll tell us about the meaning of these tribes. In order to do that, what we have to do is look for the interpretation of how we come about the tribes in Revelation and the firstborn. Who tells us? Who tells us, guys? Tell me. Ruth. Don't you love how I answer all my own questions? So if we go to Ruth, Ruth tells us that Judah becomes the firstborn. Now, we see here that, okay, let's talk about what's happening in Ruth. So Ruth is a Moabite. Okay, she's from Moab. She's not Jewish. Okay? So what happens is Boaz redeems her. And he must redeem the wife and the land. That's inheritance. It's always people and land. You can't separate those, right? That's why the 12 tribes have allotments of land for each tribe, okay? So you have the people, you have the tribe, and you have the land, right? Always, okay? That's the principle. So when you buy the field in verse 5, you must buy the wife. So what happens is, it's like any inheritance, right? So if someone dies, all right, you have to find who is the right of inheritance. So, for Ruth, her husband died, who was Jewish. So then, Boaz goes about taking Ruth as his wife and taking the land. So he goes to find the next of kin to see if they will accept her and the land. Will they take this inheritance? Okay, because they have the right of inheritance before him. Okay, so he goes and he finds the guy and says, hey, will you take this land? He's like, yeah, that's sweet. He says, okay, by the way, the land has this Moabite woman. He says, no, I can't do that. So, this is the principle of redeeming the land. Why? Is because the next of kin, the brother, okay, of the next of kin should accept the wife and accept the land so that the inheritance can pass on. But if the right of inheritance, if he refuses it, what would happen is the guy would take off his shoe. Can you see all my shoes in the shot? Let's see, I'll stand over here. So what would happen is he would have witnesses. He would take off his shoe and he would wave it in front of witnesses saying, this guy refused to take the inheritance of this woman. Okay? So it's important you realize that because that's what takes place here in Ruth chapter 4. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it because I could mar my own inheritance, okay, because it's a Moabite woman. Now this was the manner on the former time concerning Israel, concerning redeeming, concerning changing from one person to another. A man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor. And this is a testimony in Israel, okay? That's how it goes, guys. There's many interesting things when you look at the Bible and you look at the history of the Middle East. You know, in the Middle East, they have this thing of like, if you're mad at somebody or whatever, you take off your shoe and you throw it at them. Like, remember that when George Bush, he was in Iraq and the guy threw his shoes at him. But this is what it goes back to. This is the history. Some of these things exist to this day, even though for the West this is very strange to our thinking. Therefore the kinsman said to Boaz, buy it for you. And he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said to the elders and unto the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought all that is Elimelech's, and that's the and Chihon and Malhon's. These are the husbands that died, okay, in the famine. And Ruth, the Moabite, a wife to Malhon, I have purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead to an inheritance. Okay? Now we have another whole video on this. We're not going to spend too much time. But there's a prophecy that takes place, which is like, wow. Verse 11. Oh, let's see. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, so he says that he would raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. That the name of the dead would not be cut off from his brethren and from the gate of this place. And you are witnesses. He's telling the people. He's showing the shoe. He's bearing witness. He's saying, you are witnesses at the gate. And the elders said, we are witnesses. And the elders said, okay, this is like the elders told John, weep not, behold, Lion of the tribe of Judah. That's the 24 elders. And they said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that comes into your house like Rachel. One house, Rachel. And like Leah, which two build the house of Israel. Okay, so we have the two houses, right? So there are two houses to the house of Israel. The two houses, but there are four mothers, which did build the house of Israel to do worthily in Ephratah. Now, Ephratah is very important here. This prophecy again relates to the 144,000, which we'll talk about later in the video. And let your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore unto Judah. So you have the two houses, you have Rachel and Leah, okay? But what it's telling us here, it's telling us about the firstborn. It's telling us about Judah replacing Reuben as the firstborn. And it says, the house of Perez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give you, of this young woman. So, we have the house of Rachel, we have the house of Leah, and we have the promise of the Messiah going through Judah. Thus, Judah becoming the firstborn. Okay? Now, it bears also an important thing we should talk about before we get into the tribes of why Reuben is replaced as the firstborn. Okay? Now, Reuben is the firstborn through Leah, so he should have had the right of inheritance. The Messiah would have come through his lineage, his line. But why is it that he is replaced? Okay, why do we have this story? Why does Judah replace him? Why is Judah mentioned here and not Reuben? Well, simply put, what happened is you have the four mothers. You have Leah, and Leah has a handmaiden. Her name is Zilpah. So you have Leah, Zilpah. Now, Zilpah is the daughter of Laban. Okay, so Zilpah and Leah are sisters. So Leah, daughter of Laban. Zilpah, daughter of Laban. And then you have Rachel. Now, Rachel has a handmaiden. Okay, and her name is Bilhah. Okay, so she is the fourth mother. Okay, and we consider that she is most likely Gentile. She's most likely not a daughter. She's not a daughter of Laban like Leah, Rachel, and Zilpah. Okay, so most likely she is from another tribe. Okay, and she's like a servant. She's like a slave in the household. Okay, so what happens is that Reuben, as the firstborn, he sleeps with Bilhah. Okay, the Gentile. Now that's the wife of Israel. That's Jacob's wife. Now this is, in the ancients, this is a way of usurping the authority and the inheritance from the father. By taking the father, sleeping with his wife, okay, and in saying, I am now the man of the house. Okay, it's like when you have lions, it's like the alpha male. Reuben is like saying, I am the alpha male, okay, and I am the firstborn. Okay, I'm now ruling this house. In the ancients, that's what happens when you sleep with your father's wife. Okay, so that's what gets Reuben disinherited. That's why he is not the firstborn mentioned through the Messiah. So you read about that in Genesis 35:22. Then we come to the story of Judah. I'm just going to mention the story briefly. It's it's an interesting story. I think you should read the whole thing in Genesis 38. So you have this terrible thing happening with Reuben. He sleeps with one of the mothers. No, so he's disinherited. And then you have the book of Ruth in this prophecy about Judah. Not only that, it talks about Perez and Tamar. Now, what is Perez and Tamar? Perez and Tamar is this situation. Okay, this is the deal. So Judah goes into the city, and he sleeps with a prostitute. Okay? Now, what had happened is Judah have found a wife for his son and her name was Tamar. Okay, so he goes in the city. He sleeps with a prostitute. It's Tamar, the very woman he gave to be with his son. Changes her appearance and dresses like a prostitute, and he has to give his seal. He has to give his staff. He has to give his seal as a pledge to the prostitute. Okay? And so it's Tamar. Okay? And so from this, he later learns, he said, okay, you did this, your righteousness is greater than mine. Okay? Even though this is an unusual story, that's what it's talking about in Ruth. So Tamar, in doing this, okay, now, look, guys, there's a lot of sexual immorality in the Old Testament. That doesn't mean it's justified. People read the stories, and yeah, see, I could just sleep with all kinds of people and get a prostitute. No, that's not what it means, okay? But it was recognized. So why is it that Reuben did this, and he's disinherited from the firstborn, okay? And why did Tamar do this and tricked and deceived Judah, and he thus becomes the firstborn? It's very interesting, but that's what the book says. So Judah thus becomes the firstborn. And the prophecy is clear through Ruth that the Messiah would come through the line of Judah. So yes, the path there from Judah, okay, to Perez, and then it goes down and it goes to David. So in Ruth we can see that. I'm going to mention it here, okay? So that the woman and the neighbors gave there the name the son of Naomi, and they call his name Obed. Obed is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Okay, so Ruth is a Moabite, and he is the great-grandmother. She is the great-grandmother of David, Moab. Okay? So again, it's a Gentile mother that has the line to the Messiah. All right? And we'll see that there's Gentile mothers that are part of the story of the 144,000. All right? Giving the idea that the Gentiles now are these other tribes after Judah. So there we can see why Judah replaces Reuben as the firstborn. Now, in order to look at the rest of the tribes, let's look at the notes. So, the 12 tribes come from Leah and Rachel, but yet there are 4 mothers. And again, that's the pattern that we're showing you, the pattern of 4. So the 4 mothers, and from them come the 12 tribes. Okay? So, here are the 12 tribes, and here are the 4 mothers. So we have Leah, Zilpah, Bilhah, Leah listed once again, and Rachel. So these are the listing in the order in Revelation chapter 7 of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, and this is the order of the tribes. Now, as we go through the order of the tribes and we look at the mothers, okay, you can see Reuben is the firstborn. So Reuben is the firstborn, but he is replaced with Judah, as we've explained. Okay? So the first two tribes is giving us an indication of a change in the firstborn. Behold, the line of the tribe of Judah has prevailed. Christ is the root and the kindred or offspring of David. So thus Judah becomes first. Now Reuben is there to give us an indication that the firstborn has changed, both of which are sons of Leah. Okay? So that gives us our first understanding in Ruth why this change has taken place. Then what it does is it lists the next two tribes, Gad, Asher. Gad and Asher are sons of Zilpah. Okay? And this is Leah's handmaiden. And she is also one of Laban's daughters. Okay? Then we have Naphtali and Manasseh are listed. Okay? So what has happened here is Manasseh has replaced Dan. Okay? So Dan and Naphtali are sons of Bilhah. And Bilhah is the handmaiden of Rachel. Now we consider her a Gentile because in the order of the book of Genesis, it doesn't tell us that she is a daughter of Laban like Zilpah is. So we consider her a Gentile mother. Okay, so we have a Gentile mother who is mother over Naphtali and Dan. Now why is Dan replaced? Dan is replaced because Dan and Manasseh, not Manasseh, but Ephraim. Dan and Ephraim both set up golden calves. So they're not listed in the order of the 12 tribes of the 144,000. We have another video on that. But Manasseh replaces Dan because of this. Now Manasseh's mother is Asenath. And this is Joseph's wife in Egypt. Okay, so we have a Gentile, handmaiden mother, which is moved up in the priority. Okay, so you have Zilpah, and Zilpah is the handmaiden. Okay, this is not Leah, this is not Rachel. So we have the firstborn, Judah and Reuben, and then who moves up in the order is the handmaiden. Okay, Leah's handmaiden. Okay, so that moves up in the order, giving us the indication that the handmaidens are taking priority. So we have the firstborn, and then right after that we have 4 of the handmaidens and Asenath, Egypt. So we have handmaidens and we have Gentile mothers, Bilhah and Asenath. Okay, Joseph's wife in Egypt. So thus the 144,000 is giving us this indication of Gentiles. Okay, so these are Gentile tribes, that are placed in these orders. That's what is the priority in the story of the 144,000 in Revelation 7. Okay, and of course these are the 12 gates of the New Jerusalem. All right, then what happens is that we get to Leah, and we get to the order once again of the firstborn. Okay, so for example, you can see in Genesis 35, the order through Leah is Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Okay, so of those 4, these are the firstborn through Leah. And you can see Judah replaces Reuben, but then we pick up Simeon. Okay, see Simeon and Levi. So now we're going back into the order of the firstborn here. Okay, then it continues after. Remember, Judah becomes a firstborn, but then Leah is mother of Issachar and Zebulun. So again, we go through Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, the same order of Leah. After Reuben and Judah are placed here in the story of the firstborn. You see that? So you have Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, the sons of Leah. Then, of course, last we have Rachel. And Rachel, of course, has Joseph, and then she dies while giving birth to Benjamin. So there's Rachel last. So the last shall be first. Okay. So that's Rachel, and then you have Leah twice, and then you have Zilpah and Bilhah. These are the 4 mothers. But of them, what we can see is this story of Bilhah being Gentile, Asenath, Egypt, Ruth, Moab, giving us this story of Gentiles in the 12 tribes, in the order of the Messiah, okay? In the lineage to David, and the order of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel for the 144,000. Okay, so we saw Reuben lay with Bilhah, thus he was disinherited. Bilhah, she's a Gentile, okay? And Judah becomes the firstborn through Tamar, okay? Now, the other thing that happens is the element of time. So Jacob must serve for Leah 7 years, okay? And that we know to be the first 7 years of the apocalypse, okay? So for the 2 wives, he must serve one 7-year period and then a second 7-year period, okay? And then the second 7-year period giving us a total of 14 years, okay? The second set of 7 is the tribulation period, okay? And so that is the serving for Rachel, okay? So he serves for Leah 7 years, the first 7 years. Then he serves for Rachel another 7 years, 14 years total. Now he must serve another 6 years for the livestock. And what this means is that it's a separation of the sheep and the goats. So by a visitation of an angel, Jacob learns how to separate the sheep from the goats, how to separate the weak from the strong. Now, what Rachel means, or Rahel, in the Hebrew, what it means is a ewe, or a sheep. Okay, so the same word for Rachel is sheep. Okay, so when you read about him serving for these 6 years, it's the separation of the sheep of goats. It is the Rachels, okay, the sheep, okay, that are separated in another 6-year period of time after the tribulation. So this, we believe, is when Christ will come in his glory and he will separate the sheep from the goats in Matthew 25, okay? But from the tribes, we can see that there are 4 mothers. We have Leah, we have Rachel, we have Zilpah, and we have Bilhah. Now, as we mentioned before, Ephratah relates to priesthood of the 144,000, because in Psalm 132, we can see more prophecy related to the coming of the Messiah through the line of Judah and the promise to David. So we have heard of Ephratah, Psalm 132, verse 6. And these are priests clothed with righteousness, saints. Okay? So these are the saints for David's sake. Okay, so for David's sake, these are the priesthood. Okay, so it's priesthood, but it's not through the line of Judah necessarily. It's the line of Melchizedek, which is king and priest. Okay, and of the fruit of your body will I set on the throne. So that's what the Messiah, when Christ comes as the Messiah, okay, it's for David's sake, and for God's promise to David that of the fruit of his body would sit on the throne of David. So Christ sits on the throne of David, okay, as the root and offspring of David, as we saw in Revelation 22. But the children that keep the covenant shall also sit on the throne, okay? So the others that are in the offspring, the root and the offspring of David, and this is prophetically, okay? This, you don't have to be Jewish to fulfill this, all right? For Yahweh has chosen Zion. So it's 144,000 that are in Zion. It's 144,000 that are in orders of priesthood. It's 144,000 that come in order, placing emphasis, placing precedence on the handmaiden moving up in the order, in the priority, and Gentiles, okay, Bilhah, Gentiles, moving up in the order and the priority, along with Egypt. So we have Egypt, we have Moab, we have a Gentile mother, okay, along with Leah and Rachel, okay, and we have Judah becoming the firstborn, replacing Reuben. We have clear order of Leah after the firstborn is mentioned, clearly listing Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, okay, perfect order. So this is the mystery of the tribes of the 144,000. Everything in the scripture is in absolute perfect order. Scriptures will answer scriptures. And as we have seen through the book of Ruth, the Moabite, that make the woman, Ruth, that is coming to your house like Rachel, like Leah. Which two? Okay, the two are the two branches, okay, but there are four mothers. Did build the house of Israel, and do worthily in Ephratah, and make famous in Bethlehem. So guys, thanks for watching. This is part of our playlist on the 144,000. I'm sure you'll have other questions. What about this? What about that? About the 144,000, and we have many videos. I don't know if it's like 40 or 50 videos specifically on the 144,000, so I'm sure you'll see the answer of many things in the titles of the videos in the playlist. So guys, thanks for watching. Fear God. Give glory to Him, for the hour of judgment has come. Worship Him that made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters. Amen.